Okay, let's start. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our first office hour on California's BEAD Subgrantee selection process. My name is Ali Eshraghi, and I serve as a program and project supervisor for the BEAD program here at the California Public Utilities Commission, CPUC. I'm joined today by my colleagues from the CPUC and CTC Technology and Energy, and I'd like to take a moment to introduce them. From the CPUC, we have Jonathan Lakritz, Nan Tran, Mervyn Chen, and Sandra Batras. From CTC Technology and Energy, we are joined by Ziggy Rifkin-Fish, Franny Cooper, and Sam Batras. Let's go to the next slide. So here we're just covering the agenda for today's session. We have started with a brief welcome and some housekeeping notes. This includes an overview of the how to navigate the Zoom interface and the scope of this office hour. We'll then move on to the main segment where we'll address your questions and provide answers as best as we can. And finally, at the end, we'll wrap up by outlining next steps and sharing some important reminders. Next slide. Let's cover the guidelines for participating in this Q&A session today. To ask a question, please write your question in the chat, raise your hand, and wait to be called on before speaking. Keep yourself on mute until it's your turn to speak. If you're called upon to clarify any part of your question, please provide a clarification in the chat afterward. This helps us accurately capture your input for inclusion in our FAQ document. We'll start with the first round of questions, giving everyone a chance to ask one question. Please avoid multi-part questions during this round. After the initial round, if time allows, we open the floor to additional questions. If you'd like to follow up on someone else's question, please write it in the chat and wait to be called upon. Let's go to the next slide. So here's some information to guide today's session. This session is focused on questions about the subgrantee selection process, specifically the topics covered in our first 4 webinars on subgrantee selection process: pre-qualification, program design, which included project area negotiations and selection process, program evaluation, and applicant financial requirements. Several aspects of the BEAD program are still being finalized. Some questions may need to be addressed in a future session or in our FAQ document. There will be questions that we might not be able to provide answer during this session. I just wanted to note that we will take those questions back, review them, and include the responses in our FAQ document. If you have questions about the challenge process, please email them to the bead@cpuc.ca.gov. This session, as I mentioned earlier, is focused on the subgrantee selection process, and we may not have the subject matter experts on this call to be able to answer those questions. As a reminder, the CPUC is required to follow the rules established by the NTIA, which administers the BEAD program. Question answers from today's session will be posted in the FAQ section of our website. Additionally, we note that the session is being recorded, and the recording will also be made available on our website. Thank you for joining us today, and let's get started. So now we are ready for your questions. As I mentioned earlier, if you have a question, please write your question in the chat, raise your hand, and wait to be called on before speaking. Thank you. Okay, let's start the first question. Marin County has two adjacent CBGs in its BEAD project area, one high cost exempt from matching funds and the other requiring matching funds. A 5-mile feeder road requiring fiber separates the CBGs. Can we assign all costs for construction on the road to the high cost CBG? Ziggy, do you want to?
Sure. Yeah, I'll be happy to take that. So the the costs are really calculated on a project level and then assigned in terms of the relative cost weight to to a particular CBG based on the relative proportion of BSLs that are included. So so it isn't really a question of, well, we'll take 95% of the total cost and we'll plop it all into one CBG. It's really allocated on a proportional basis. Do you want me to take the next one, Ali?
Yes, let's go for the next question about the project area.
Okay, so the question is, explain more about how specific BSLs will be included in a project area, and are project areas to be defined by CPUC or the applicants. So what CPUC is defining is the project units, those are CBGs, and but the applicant will pull and aggregate together those CBGs based on what its preferences are, as well as certain requirements for a minimum amount of certain areas, low income areas, for example. And if you want to get higher scoring, there are other types of areas that will give you highest scores if you include those. And there are also some requirements that although you can apply for multiple projects with different boundaries, each project should, all the CBGs should be adjacent to each other. So, but within the constraints of those, yes, you're the one who gets to define the project area.
Thank you, Ziggy. So the next question is about the timeline. Do you have the target dates for pre-qualification and its application stages? I just note that that in the next few weeks we are going to publish a timeline, and this will be addressed there. So please look for that. The next question is, will you be using the same application and award platform that you use for the FFA last mile grants? So that the answer is no. The BEAD has its own requirement, and we are developing the application platform and the application material specifically for BEAD. And those also, the stakeholders will be notified about those soon. Do you have a time frame when maps be finalized? So we are working on that with NTIA, and there will be updates on that in the next few weeks as well. Let me, before to go to the next question in terms of the timeline and the general program design, Jonathan, anything that you want to add?
Sorry, I'm sorry. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm still off the mute button. I just wanted to address that the platform that we'll be using is being provided by Ready. So if you participated in our challenge process, you'll have some familiarity already with the platform. And while we would have liked to have used the same platform for both FFA and for the BEAD program, the time frame that we have to implement the BEAD program didn't permit us to be able to set up the FFA platform. And I also wanted to indicate that we will be encourage everyone to sign up to receive updates. Particularly, we have a constant contact mechanism where we send out updates to stakeholders who are interested in hearing about things like when the timeframes are going to be announced and when the challenge process results are going to be announced. So please sign up for those, and you will find out as soon as the information is made publicly available. That's all for me, Ali. Thank you.
Thank you. So let's move on to the next question, which is about the matching requirement. So Ziggy, this might be something that we need to take back, but do you want to read the question and anything that you can provide at this point? And I note that this is basically the matching fund is the topic for our next webinar next week.
So I don't see that in the chat. Can you read it to me?
For entities who wish to utilize the bonding option instead of the letter of credit, will the state require the bond to cover 100% of the cost to then be reduced as milestones are hit, or will the state allow applicants to have a bond for 10% of the costs for the duration of the project period?
Okay, so yeah, so that's that relates to the guarantee that you'll use for sure in terms of surety or letter of credit. So the answer is yes. Both options are available. So either you could start up with 100% and then reduce as you meet milestones, or you could opt for the 10%, but then you'll have to maintain that 10% until you have satisfactorily completed the entire project.
Thanks, Ziggy. So the next question, is the CPUC anticipating changes to eligibility requirements based on current concerns regarding Senator Cruz's remarks around equity and coveted populations? If not changes, perhaps changes to the timeline. I'm not aware of any changes at this point.
Yeah, Ali,
Yes.
what would you like me to address that one?
Yes, please. Thank you.
So to Natalie, I'm not sure the specific comments you were referencing, but in general, we have equity criteria and eligibility criteria that are in our approved initial proposal volume 2, and those are what we are currently using right now in terms of equity and covered population. So there are requirements that a certain proportion of the census block groups in project proposal have to either be low income areas or they have to be disadvantaged communities. We're going to be providing additional clarification in the coming weeks on that requirement, and we'll be covering it in a future webinar. But at this point in time, the requirements from our program are defined first and foremost in the legislation, then the NOFO, and then our initial proposal volume 2.
Thank you, Jonathan. The next question is, does CPUC have a target price and target technology for each home passed? Ziggy, do you want to explain our process?
Yeah, sure. So there isn't a target price or target technology, as you probably know. There is a built-in design mandated by NTIA and customized for California's needs based on feedback that we've received from California stakeholders that prioritizes fiber technologies wherever feasible, of course. But there isn't a preset technology for any particular area, nor is there a preset target price. That being said, NTA has developed, based on cost quest analysis, some target pricing of their own, and you may have access to other estimates that you are going to use. CPUC will develop the extremely high cost per location threshold for each area based on the actual proposals coming in, and dynamically adjust these as proposals come in and are assigned.
And just to build on Ziggy's answer, so what we'll be doing is we'll be taking a look at all the projects that are submitted, and then we're going to optimize along 2 parameters. First and foremost, we have to reach 100%. And then secondly, we're going to try to maximize the amount of fiber that's being deployed consistent with the NTIA requirements. So we'll be going through this dynamic process as we evaluate the applications and or if we enter into negotiations or have subsequent rounds of applications. So it's kind of a dynamic equation that we're trying to solve, but the idea is to achieve 100% coverage and optimize the amount of fiber deployment.
That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. So
I
let's
can
move on.
I can take the next two questions. They are actually linked to each other. So the first question is the NTIA released a policy notice saying reliable broadband service proposals below the extremely high cost per location threshold should be considered before any alternative technology proposals. Can you elaborate on impacts for reliable broadband service proposals? And how will CPUC pick a winner if two bids come in for the same area and one offers fiber at a higher cost and another offers unlicensed fixed wireless at a lower cost? Which wins? And just for those who don't know or have forgotten, unlicensed fixed wireless along with low Earth orbit satellite technology are the two chief technologies in the category of alternative technology that NTIA defined. And the requirement that has been adopted in IPv2 initial proposal volume 2 in California is a sequential evaluation of proposals where we go through and look at priority broadband, which means fiber first, and evaluate those and see if they can be assigned. And then if that is not possible, then we go to other reliable broadband service proposals. And only if there's no solution for that do we then go into alternative technology. So you will never have a situation where you are directly comparing a reliable broadband service with unlicensed fixed wireless, and the reliable broadband service proposal will always be evaluated before an unlicensed fixed wireless proposal.
Thank you, Ziggy. So let's move on to the next question. I'm not sure if I follow completely, but will last smart federal funding account grants cost also be weighed in developing the bid extremely high cost per location?
Would you like me to take that one?
Yes. Thank you, Jonathan.
Sure. So the short answer is yes. In developing the extremely high cost per location threshold, we're looking at a variety of inputs, including awarded grants and applications that were submitted in the federal funding account, our CASF programs, the various cost models that are out there that we have access to. And also, as I mentioned, there's this dynamic exercise. So we have a number of inputs into determining the extremely high cost per location threshold. And we're also looking, as Ziggy said, in this very structured way of evaluating applications. And there is an iterative nature in the sense of making sure we reach the 100% goal. You know, if we had an infinite amount of funding, then we would just approve every fiber project, but that we have a very generous of $1.8 billion in California, but it is not enough money to build fiber everywhere in the state. So we will be moving through, as defined by NTIA, the priorities of technology and funding types. That's my answer.
So I don't see any more questions. We will wait for a few minutes to see if there are any other questions.
I just want to encourage everyone, if you don't have a question right now, please remember that we'll be doing these every week. And also, at any point, if you have a question, you can always send it to beadgrant@cpuc.ca.gov, and we will be answering those questions and also updating our frequently asked questions, which should be posting our first version in the next couple of weeks. So don't want to have anyone feel like this is your only opportunity to ask questions. We'll be available to answer questions throughout the process.
Thank you, Jonathan. We have one more question, which is about challenge process. Will locations already identified to be covered by RDOF money, will they be excluded? Jonathan, is this something that you can address, or should we take it offline?
Sure. So in the NOFO, the NTIA requires that state broadband offices remove potentially eligible locations and for which there's an enforceable commitment. And an enforceable commitment can either be through a federally funded program such as RDOF or the high cost fund, CAF, phase 1, phase 2, or it can be through a state program such as our federal funding account or the California Advanced Services Fund. So we are, if there is an awarded grant, an enforceable commitment, basically an awarded grant by a federal or a state agency, then those locations will consider to be served.
Thank you. So the next question is the registration for the next webinar posted yet? We're checking on that and can update you during this webinar.
I think I can answer that question, which is that we should have that registration posted by the end of the day. We're having some technical problems that I'm sure everyone can appreciate. Our password expired and we need to reset it. So we're working on that, and apologies for that.
Thank you, Jonathan. The next question. Will the map automatically exclude the areas that have been allocated on other Fed state funds?
So I can go ahead and answer that question. So when we post the map that shows the results of the challenge process, there will be several elements to it. One of it will be a layer that can be turned on and off that shows where there are enforceable commitments. In addition, as consistent with the NTIA requirement that I previously mentioned, if there is an enforceable commitment in that area, then those locations will show as being served as a result of an enforceable commitment.
I can read the next question. I'm interested in protecting BSLs that we already serve. We provide greater than 120 at these BSLs using licensed fixed wireless. We did not participate in the challenge process, but our service area is reported in the 6/2024 FCC BDC. Is there anything we can do to protect the BSLs that we serve from being overbilled by BEAD funding? Jonathan, do you want to?
Sure, I'll start off, but Ziggy, if you have a more definitive
Why don't
answer.
you start?
But I think the short answer is that, Tamar, we will need to get back to answer that question because I'm not sure. We are going to be reflecting version 5 of the fabric when we have our map of. So we're going to be posting the next couple of weeks the results of the challenge process. That's based upon version 4 of the fabric. When we open the subgrantee application process, that will be based upon version 5. I do not know if the information that you provided in the June 20th, 2024 FCC BDC will be reflected in version 5 or not. So that's something that we can take that issue offline and answer that question. But I don't personally myself right now how the two link up, because I know that there are periodic updates that people put in place, but I don't know how they flow through all of the intricacies of the FCC fabric.
I would add to that, Jonathan. I wholeheartedly agree with your assessment here. I would also add that it might be best to address it in frequently asked questions, because NTA provides for a realignment process prior to award and after award for sort of truing up these locations, but there will be a burden to show evidence of this.
Right, and just to clarify, requirement of the BEAD program is not to fund locations that are already served. So as Ziki was saying, there are several checks along the way where there will be an opportunity for providers that have deployed service, because we understand that providers deploy service all the time, not just sort of when we decide when the challenge process is done and the map is finalized. So there will be opportunities along the way with associated requirements to provide the appropriate evidence.
Thank you. Go ahead, Bruce.
Yes, to the point of these BSLs that we are seeing, and we have a really large rural area. We have BSLs in the current fabric that are showed unserved, that a local provider is saying are served. And if we try to include some of these locations in our cost, they're going to drive the cost up significantly because they're just outliers from the core area. So how do we true up, if you will, during the estimating process can we simply say they're part of like a 10% group that we're not going to serve? We're going to end up with truly high costs. Once the true up comes in, our cost will go down considerably, if that makes any sense.
So, Ziggy, please jump in. I think I'm not sure I'm quite following your question, but as part of our initial proposal volume 2, potential applicants are allowed or are required to provide a cost for serving 100% of all the unserved and underserved BSLs in their project area, which again is made up of census block groups that they have selected. In addition, they can provide a cost for serving 90% of the BSLs in the project area. In addition, but I think your question might be slightly different than that, which is that you're aware that a service provider is going to be expanding its service into some areas. And we addressed that in the previous question, which is that service providers, there'll be an opportunity for service providers and or applicants to be able to demonstrate that some of the BSLs have been served since the time that the eligibility was determined through the challenge process. I don't know if that's responsive to your question.
Well, it is, and we may be unique, but some of these, the conflict is coming that the BDC data is indicating that these are served, but the Cost Quest Fabric version 6 that's out now are showing that they're unserved, or at least the CSV file for BEAD unserved and underserved locations indicating there's a conflict there now, right? It wouldn't matter if it was right next to another location, but these are miles away. And if we have to include them in our 100%, we are going to drive our costs up by significantly, and then provider will come in later and challenge, and all of a sudden we will have our total project cost. We will have negotiated against ourselves, if you will. In the meantime, there's a possibility for that. It's just if there's going to be a true up in this conflict, it's going to happen while we're spending money to do our network designs. We're going to have to sort of make 2 or 3 plans.
If I can add, I sympathize and empathize with you because I've been there. The only thing I can say is that everybody else will be in the same boat. And this is exactly why that alternative percentage is there to give you some flexibility. And that's where you would probably be competing with other providers. Because chances are, if it's prohibitively expensive at the 100% level for you, it is the same situation for others who would be interested in serving that larger area.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you. So we have another question. Z, are you able to see the question? So would you mind taking that?
Yes. So this is exactly what the challenge process was for. And there were rigorous standards of proof involved to assess exactly these kind of situations. So if somebody did not participate and wanted to, I mean, it certainly is a missed opportunity. But these in places where this is problematic, certainly this was something that was evaluated in many areas. I can't guarantee that everybody took the opportunity to challenge or provide documentation for this.
And thanks. And the question was about basically some carriers claim that they are providing or can provide high speeds in certain rural areas, but they're not currently serving any customers at those speed. So the question was mainly about the challenge.
Yeah,
As Ziggy mentioned.
I think we could let's address this question through an FAQ.
Okay.
Thank you.
So let's probably wait for a few more minutes to see if there are any other questions. If not, we can wrap up. It's one for the so I was going to say let's go back to slide, but it seems there's a new question. How long is the expected wait time for an email to be answered? We are going through the emails and we are trying to answer them as soon as possible. But as we are basically dedicating more staff from the challenge process to the sub-grantee selection process, we should be able to answer them in a shorter time frame. Let's go back to slides and wrap up. So let's quickly cover the follow-up and resources. If you haven't already, please sign up here. The link that we provided here to receive email updates about the BEAD program. For questions about the California's BEAD sub-grantee selection process, please email speedgrant@cpuc.ca.gov. For other inquiries about the BEAD program in California, use the other email that we have used through the challenge process. And for the overall purpose of this program, bead@cpuc.ca.gov. As mentioned earlier, we are developing a specific FAQ document for the sub-grantee selection process. Once finalized, it will be posted on our website for your references. As Jonathan mentioned earlier, the first version of that document should be posted in the next couple of weeks. Next slide. So over the next few months, we continue with our webinars and office hours on Tuesday and Thursdays, 1 to 2 p.m. as part of our BEAD outreach opportunities. These webinars and office hours are open to anyone interested in attending. Registration link will be provided on our BEAD event page. These sessions provide an open forum for stakeholders to ask specific questions, seek clarification, and receive guidance on the BEAD application process. Stakeholders are encouraged to attend these sessions to fully understand the requirements and opportunities provided through the BEAD program. These events are designed to promote transparency, collaboration, and success for all potential subgrantees. Thank you for your participation and engagement today, and have a great afternoon.